Okay, this is how an RVZ02 Raven case is put together. So literally, you need everything to be mini. Small form factor is a must. You can't have pretty much any normal drive other than an SSD in the computer. You have to get specifically an ITX motherboard, which is very small. You have to get an SFX power supply. This manufacturer, Silverstone, actually came out with a new type, SFX-L, where it enables the power supply right here to just be a little longer so that you can get a larger fan to basically fill up this space. But I don't even recommend that because, as you can see, I had to put all my cables in this space because there's no room. So cable management is very minimal. Well, you have to manage your cables a lot, but the space for the management is very minimal. So I just tucked them all in that. But yeah, if you want to use everything, if you want a DVD drive, you have to get a slim DVD drive. Hard drives, I got an extra hard drive for storage. You have to get a 2.5 hard drive, mainly used in laptops. The SSD, all SSDs come in 2.5 drive sizes, so it doesn't matter if you get an SSD, it'll just come in that size, 2.5 inch. I went with a FM2 build. I'm a budget builder. Performance per dollar is my specialty. So I went for an Athlon X4 860K, which it's a modern quad core from AMD. It is based off of the Kavari architecture. It's pretty fast for being only about $75. So they pump out about 100 watts for the thermal design power, and I just went ahead and I put a stock fan on rated for a 125 watt AMD CPU, kind of what you would find with like an 8350. So it's got 25% better cooling than what the chip is rated for, and it's still going to be a small fan that'll fit in this slim form factor, because height is a problem because the case is so thin. So with the cooler, you can't just get any one, and I didn't want to spend big bucks on a premium low profile heatsink, so I just grabbed a stock one that was higher rated, and it's great. I was able to overclock the chip to 4.2 gigahertz, which is a mild overclock, but I didn't want to go crazy because this is a small little case and the heat dissipation is not ideal. There's actually, when they designed the case, there is nowhere to put a system fan at all, which is terrible. But what they do is when you put the panels on to cover it up, they have giant vents on them. I'll show you. Will look like this when it's covered up, and it has vents that pretty much let airflow throughout the entire area. That's everything that's creating heat. So you have air going in with the power supply and CPU fan, which is basically the only fans moving anything in there. And then on the other side, that has the exact same grills, you have a full-size graphics card. And this is why I chose this case, is because you can have all of your mini components, and it's not compromising performance in any way. They're just a little bit more expensive to get that small form factor, and if you can deal with the build being a little bit more complicated and routing your wires more carefully to not be in the way of anything making heat or, you know, touching fan blades or anything, you can get a massive amount of performance in a small area. And normally when you have a case like this where you're putting all these small components in, you have to compromise the size of your graphics card Usually they're cube form factors. They allow for 9-inch, maybe 10-inch graphics cards. But the top end graphics cards are like 12 inches, 12 and a half inches, like a 980 Ti is like 12 inches. So you can't get cases, small cases like these with max performance cards. That's why I chose this case. So as you can see, the card sits along the entire length of the case in the back. That thin space that is used for the drives, slim hard drives, they don't take up a lot of space. So using just a couple inches of width that you have, you can make the card go that way and you can fit it in there and you get the entire length of the case, which is awesome. You get 13 inches of length and there's ample room for the height. This is a MSI 960 and I don't know if you can tell, but the the cooler is actually a little higher than the card itself. So even with a wider card, if you will, it still fits perfectly. So you can pretty much fit any graphics card, any size graphics card in this case, which is amazing. You can put the top end card and the top end cards in the future. They'll just fit in this. Obviously you can't do SLI, but a top end card is going to be on par with two high end cards, so I always recommend doing a single card anyway. I actually had so much space left over that I decided to just put my internal, well, it's supposed to be external Wi-Fi adapter, just in that space, just to make it so I didn't have to have this cable coming out. So I was able to actually put it in there. I put LED lights along this. Looks really nice when it's on. And LED lights down here. And that'll show through the vents. I really recommend this case if you want max performance from a high-end graphics card. Where space is going to be a problem, but you still want a small form factor. I can't think of any other case that is this small. I think it's something like 700 cubic inches. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% certain off the top of my head, but when I was looking at cubic inches for cases, I couldn't find a case that was this small that had 13-inch graphics cards capabilities. There was no other choice other than the Silverstone Raven RVZ02. So it's just a one-of-a-kind case basically, and I'm really happy at how it turned out. I've seen people put sixth generation, basically current top generation Intel CPUs into their ITX mini motherboards, and they would get a little bit bigger cooler because you do have some space in here to put a little bit more copper and aluminum and a bigger fan. And with that, on an Intel chip, you could do a serious overclock and just create a beast of a processing unit. And with that, you can put a top-end card like a 980 Ti, and you literally have the most powerful computer that you can possibly get in a form factor the size of an Xbox. So, and I looked, and this is only a little bit bigger than an Xbox. The compromises, though, everyone's going SSDs, so that's fine. But if you want storage, that's where you have to be compromised. You can get 8 terabyte hard drives now, early 2016. You can't get that on a laptop hard drive. I think the most you can get right now is a terabyte, maybe 2. So you're not going to be able to get big storage in this computer, but this computer is designed for small form factor gaming, so storage space isn't really a problem unless you wanted a powerhouse for video editing, and I can see where that would be a problem, but you can just get external storage for your hard drives. If that's the case, it makes it easier to move the data around anyway. And the other compromise that you'd have to make is, because of the power supply being an SFX and being about half the size as a normal one, you don't have as top end of an option for the power supply. So I think the highest power supply I saw that you could get was 600 watts, which is good. They're very expensive. I ended up getting a deal on a Silverstone SFX 450, and that might seem low, 450 watts. The main point is to get power on the 12 volt rail, and with the Silverstone SFX power supplies, I really noticed that their 12 volt rails are awesome. They are single rail, so you're going to get max performance off of one power rail, and you could pretty much power the entire 450 watts off of that rail, which is just awesome. So basically what that means is all of the power, 450 watts, can go onto the 12 volt rail, which powers the big graphics card. And the downside is you couldn't put an older card that was huge in this. It'll physically fit, but the power requirements that you would need from your power supply, like if you got a like a 7970 and you overclocked it, I think those can pull up to 250 to 300 watts, and you're just not going to be able to have your power supply be able to dish out that much power to that kind of card. Luckily, all the newer cards, especially from NVIDIA, on the Maxwell 2 architecture, the top end cards like a 980 Ti, I don't even think they do 200 watts, and that's a top end card. So as long as they don't come out with these beasts of graphics cards that require 250 plus watts, a computer like this with a 450 watt power supply will be able to power those high-end cards. So there's very little compromise as long as you're staying with current tech with SSDs and newer graphics cards and newer CPUs. So overall, I totally recommend this case if you want small form factor. It is one of a kind.